Welcome to Muscles and Magic the Gathering. Now, I'm Bobby Maximus. I represent the muscles. I'm the world's most powerful nerd. These cards represent Magic the Gathering, something that's been a huge passion of mine for 30 years. And today we have a very special deck. We are here to look at my personal energy featured deck that is helmed, that is commanded, that is led by Satya Aetherflux Genius. Now, before we go on to that, I just want to say this is one of my favorite decks of all time. And one of the reasons is the energy mechanism in Magic holds a special place in my heart. My oldest kid, he's 16 years old. He was born in 2009. When the Kaladesh set came out in 2015 or 16, it was somewhere around there. This was the very first set that we collected together. If you know anything about me, you know that I'm a collector first. At one point, I had over 40 complete sets. Like, we're talking every card in normal and foil. We're talking tokens. We're talking lands. We are talking everything. But my thing used to be building complete sets, and this was the first set that we built together. And this is the set that made him fall in love with Magic the Gathering. Anyway, you might be wondering what that has to do with energy. Kaladesh was the first set the energy mechanism was seen. So we love Kaladesh. We love Aether Revolt. In this deck, has a bunch of those cards. So I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite decks to play with. It's one of my favorite decks to showcase and one of my favorite decks to show off. And there's a lot of pet cards in these decks. But that said, if you want to learn about energy, you want to learn how to harness the power of energy, you want to learn about artifacts, this deck is for you. So without further ado, let's get right down to business. Let's talk about Satya Aetherflux Genius, the only energy commander, in my opinion. Now, there are some others. People play with Dr. Madison Lee. People play with Liberty Prime Recharged. But this is by far, if you want to build a competitive energy deck, this is absolutely the best. So we have Satya Aetherflux Genius. He has Menace and Haste. And whenever Satya attacks, create a tapped and attacked token. Create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to one other target non-creature you control. You get 2 energy counters. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So what you want to do with this, you want to make Satya unblockable or indestructible. So you're going to see a lot of what I call commander protection pieces in this deck. But 2, you're going to want to produce a ton of energy, because if you can manage, it's not like the end-all be-all, but if you can manage to keep those tokens you're creating on the board, you'll absolutely run over your opponent. So that is our commander. Our first Planeswalker from Kaladesh, and you know she had to be included, Saheeli Rai. The +1 ability, scry 1, Saheeli Rai deals 1 damage to each opponent. The -2 ability, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. We're going to do some really nasty stuff with that in this deck. And the final ability, search your library for up to 3 artifact cards with different names, put them onto the battlefield, and shuffle your library. And in this deck, with the type of artifacts you'll see, that can be an absolute game ender. So that is my Planeswalker. But I'm not going to take her off the screen yet, because I want to show you the first creature that we have in our decks, the Felidar Guardian. And you know what's coming if you're an old school Magic player. When Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. This here creates an infinite combo where you can create infinite Felidar Guardians. So how's this going to work? You have Saheeli on the board. Felidar Guardian is going to come into play. You can exile a target permanent. So you're going to exile Saheeli Rai. It's going to come back onto the battlefield. You can activate the second ability right away. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Another Felidar Guardian is going to come in as a token. You're going to bounce Saheeli Rai. It's going to come back in, and you're going to do that perpetually. You're going to make as many Felidar Guardians as you want. Absolutely insane combo. So you know that classic combo had to be shown in this deck. We have the Volatile Stormdrake. Flying, hexproof from activated and triggered abilities. When Volatile Stormdrake enters the battlefield, exchange control of Volatile Stormdrake and target creature and opponent controls. If you do, you get 4 energy. Then sacrifice that creature unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. Great card right there. We talked about Satya being the only energy commander, if you will. This is another one that could be an energy commander, although I like Satya better, but this is still pretty cool. And one thing that I like to do with these decks sometimes is just swap out commanders. It just makes it fun. So we're going to call this the secret or backup commander from this deck. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Whenever Liberty attacks or blocks, sacrifice it unless you pay 2 energy. And then you pay 2 and sacrifice an artifact. You get 2 energy and you draw cards. Walking Ballista from Ether Revolt. I told you, I love those sets. They're the first sets me and my sons collected together. There's a lot of Ether Revolt and Kaladesh cards in this build for that reason. And they do have, in fairness, the best energy-related cards. Walking Ballista enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. Put a 1/1 counter on Walking Ballista if you pay 4, and then you can remove a 1/1 counter from Walking Ballista. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Elish Norn, the Mother of Machines. Vigilance. If a permanent entering the battlefield creates a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. Dockside Extortionist. Let's just shut down all your nonsense about banned cards right now. I play with banned cards. I collect banned cards. At my table, in my pod, in my play group, we all play with banned cards, and I'm just going to give you my quick argument for that. You can't tell me that the dockside is oppressive, that the dockside is unfun, and then you're allowed to throw a Thassa's Oracle and a Demonic Consultation in your deck. It just doesn't work that way, all right? You can't tell me that the dockside's unfun, and then you're allowed Augustine, you're allowed one of these other stacks pieces, you're allowed a Rhystic Study, you're allowed a Smothering Tide. Like, there's just no way. So Dockside's going in my deck. And there's a lot of synergy in this deck, by the way. But when Dockside enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. We have the Wormcoil Engine, one of my favorite artifact creatures of all time. Death Touch, Lifelink. When Wormcoil Engine dies, create a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Worm artifact creature token with Lifelink. Sphinx of the Revelation, flying, Lifelink. Whenever you gain life, you get that many energies, and then you pay this mana, you pay X energy, you draw X cards. Whirler Virtuoso, one of the best energy cards of all time. When Whirler Virtuoso enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. Pay 3 energy counters, create a 1/1 colorless stop your artifact creature token with flying. By the way, if you made it this far, this deck also creates a million Thopters and does have kind of like a 1/1 counter theme in it as well. So it's a really cool combo deck. Roll Cartographer, landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, you get an energy counter. Pay 6 energy counters, draw 3 cards. Ether Gold Miner. Whenever Ether Gold Miner attacks, you get 2 energy. Pay 2 energy, exile Ether Gold Miner, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Karn, Legacy Reforged. Karn, Legacy's Reforged power and toughness are equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, add a mana for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells until end of turn. You don't lose mana as steps and phases end. And we do have some high casting cost artifacts in this deck. The Platinum Imperium. Your life total can't change. This has saved me so many times, I can't even tell you. Whenever I build an artifact-based deck, there is always some type of golem in here. This is one of my favorites. Lightning Runner. Double strike and haste. Whenever Lightning Runner attacks, pay 2 energy. Then you may pay, I think it's 8 energy. If you pay, untap all creatures you control. After this, you get an additional combat phase. Another backup or secret commander, Dr. Madison Lee. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get energy. Like I said, there's a lot of synergy between artifacts and energy. Pay an energy. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste till the end of turn. Pay 3 energy, draw a card. Pay 5 energy, return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Big Bad Artifacts, the king of big bad artifacts, Blightsteel Colossus. Trample, Infect. Blightsteel Colossus is indestructible And if it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal Blightsteel Colossus and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. I mean, honestly, this card should really be legendary, but because it's not, with Saheeli, you can make a token of that, or you can go chase it. So that is absolutely incredible in this deck. Ragavan. When Ragavan Nimble Pilfer deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library until the end of the turn. You can cast that card. The Esper Sentinel, great artifact creature, arguably one of the greatest ever. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. The Electrostatic Pummeler. It enters the battlefield. You get 3 energy. I told you this deck was going to produce all the energy, all right? Another card from Kaladesh. You pay 3 energy. Electrostatic Pummeler gets +X until the end of turn, where X is its power. Aetherstorm Rock. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy. And whenever it attacks, you may pay 2 energy. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on it and tap up to 1 target creature defending player controls. The Ether Squall Ancient. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get 3 energy. You pay a bunch of energy, return all other creatures to their owner's hands. Activate this ability only anytime you can activate a sorcery or cast a sorcery. Aethertide Whale. When Aethertide Whale enters the battlefield, you get 6 energy, pay 4 energy, return Aethertide Whale to its owner's hand. That can be blatantly abused. Trust me on that. Hull Breacher. Free the Hull Breacher. All right. Again, we don't care about banned cards around here. If an opponent would draw a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. Another Colossus. There are a lot of Colossuses in this deck. This one, the Salvation Colossus, an energy-based Colossus. Flying, Vigilance, Trample. Whenever you attack, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain indestructible until the end of the turn. And then the Earth cost, you can pay 8 energy. Amped Raptor. When Amped Raptor enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Then if you cast it from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by paying an amount of energy equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. And by the way, I loved how Modern Horizons 3 included a bunch of energy cards to just really, really make it possible to build this deck. There was a lot of cards in Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, but I needed some cards to really make this competitive, and Modern Horizons 3 came through in the clutch. So thank you for that, Wizards. Whenever another artifact creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and get an energy. Whenever you attack, you may pay 3 energy. When you do, put 2 1/1 counters and a flying counter on target attacking creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types. The Razorfield Ripper. Whenever Razorfield Ripper or equipped creature attacks, you get energy. Then it gets +X until the end of turn, where X is the amount of energy that you have. Reconfigure, pay 2 or pay 3 energy. The Aurora Shifter. Whenever Aurora Shifter deals combat damage to a player, you get that many energies. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, Aurora Shifter becomes a copy of another target creature you control, except it has this ability. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you get that many energy. All right, so those are my creatures energy related. A lot of synergy with Saheeli, but great cards to use in this deck. Now let's talk about the artifacts. This is a big one in this deck, the Simulacrum Synthesizer. When Simulacrum Synthesizer enters the battlefield, scry 2. Whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. I talked about commander protection. You have the Brotherhood of Regalia. That makes my commander unblockable. We have the Lightning Greaves and gives it ward. We have the Lightning Greaves to make sure it has Shroud. And we have maybe the best ever, Mithril Coat, makes it indestructible, all for the purposes of being attacking regularly with Satya. So you know I needed 3 pieces of commander protection in this deck. Soul Ring, we have a little bit of mana ramp. There's more mana ramp to come as well. We have the Arcane Signet. These 2 are 2 of the greatest mana ramp pieces in history. If I could, I would have a Mana Crypt in here. I would have a Jeweled Lotus in here. I would probably have a Mox Diamond, but I ran out of them. They're in my other decks. So sometimes too, when I build decks, you might ask yourself a question. Bobby, why didn't you include this card? You need this card. You need that card, right? I talked about Smothering Tithe. Would it be nice to have a Smothering Tithe in here? Absolutely it would. And I was just checking to make sure I don't, and I do not. But sometimes I just don't have the cards to put in the deck because they're used in other cards. That's why I say this is the realest Magic the Gathering channel that you can see, because I use real cards. I don't just build optimized decks with graphics. I don't use proxies. I only use real cards. So what you see is what you get. All right, more cards. We have Gonti's Aether Heart. Whenever Gonti's Aether Heart or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you get 2 energy. You pay a bunch of energy, you can exile Gonti's Aether Heart, and you can take a new turn after this one, all right? And here's a really cool thing. Saheeli. If you have Gonti's Aether Heart on the battlefield, you can copy it with Saheeli, and you can go get yourself a bunch of extra turns if you have enough energy. Just want to reiterate how that works. For her second ability, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste. Exile at the beginning of the next end step. Well, if this is on the board, you can copy this every single turn with Saheeli. So incredible combo right there. We have the modules, and there are all kinds of combos with this. All right, so the decoction module, I'm going to show all these 3 at once. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy, and you can return a target creature you control to its owner's hand by paying 4 mana. Whenever you get 1 or more energy, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are placed on a permanent you control, you may pay 1. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. All right, so an incredible array of combos that you can use these 3 cards with. Absolutely love them. They all go hand in hand. The Aetherworks Marvel. Whenever a permanent you control is put into the graveyard, you get energy. Pay a bunch of energy. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. We have the Panharmonicon. All right. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. The Conversion Apparatus. Add a mana. Pay 3 mana and tap, you get 3 energy. If you pay 3 energy and 3 mana of any combination in any colors. Etheric Amplifier. Add 1 mana of any color. Choose 1, activate only as a sorcery. Double the number of each kind of counter on target permanent. Double the number of each kind of counter that you have. Aetherflux Conduit. Whenever you cast a spell, you get an amount of mana equal to the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Pay 50. Draw 7 cards. You may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. Stone Idol Generator. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you get mana. Pay 6 mana, create a 6/2 colorless artifact, colorless construct artifact creature token with trample. Activate only as a sorcery. Solar Transformer. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. If you tap it, you can pay. You can get a mana, or you can tap it and pay energy and get 1 mana of any color. The Ether Refinery. If you would get 1 or more energy, you get twice that many energies instead. This is just sick in this deck. Tap it, you get energy. Then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, create an XX black Etherborn creature token where X is the amount of energy paid this way. And then the Izzet Genitorum. If you would get 1 or more energy, you get that many plus 1 energy instead. Draw a card. Activate only if you paid or lost 4 or more energy this turn. Those are my artifacts in a Disney array. And again, I want to go back to this because this right here is combo central. Definitely, if I was building an energy deck, I would have all 3 of these in. Like I said, there are all kinds of combos in here where you can make unlimited Thopters. You can make unlimited energy. It's absolutely incredible, all right? Enchantments, let's take a look at those. We have Mechanized Production. Enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as another, you win the game. In this deck, that is a win condition. We have the Underworld Breach, a way to get stuff back from our graveyards. Ether Revolt, monster card. As long as a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. Whenever you get 1 or more energy, Ether Revolt deals that much damage to any target. And Static Prison. When Static Prison enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Until Static Prison leaves the battlefield, you get 2 energy at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. Sacrifice Static Prison unless you pay energy. We're going to have no problem paying that cost because we have a ton of energy in this deck. One of my favorite banned cards of all time, Tinker. Just go get whatever artifact you want. Get a Blight Steel Colossus onto the game or onto the board in turn 3. We have Swords to Plowshares. We have a Counterspell. We have a Disallow, all right? We have a Path to Exile, and we have a Dovin's Veto. I've been telling you before, I'm going to tell you again, you don't have enough removal in your commander decks, and you don't have enough counter spells. This really helps you control the other opponent. Galvanic Discharge, right? Choose target creature or planeswalker. You get 3 energy, then you may pay any amount of energy. Galvanic Discharge deals that much damage to that permanent. Wrath of the Skies. You get X energy counters, then you may pay any amount of energy. Destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with mana value less than or equal to the amount of energy paid this way. Wheel of Potential. You get 3 energies. Then you may pay X energy. Each player may exile their hand and draw X cards. If X is 7 or more, you may play cards you owned exiled this way until the end of turn. And then we have Jolted Awake. Choose up to 1 target artifact or creature card in your graveyard. You get 2 energy. Then you may pay an amount of energy equal to that card's mana value. If you do, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Lands. We won't go over all these individually, but we have a ton of basics. By the way, if you want to see the show notes, you can see a deck list for this. It is on my Mox Field. I've got it pulled up to the side here. Let's go non-basic lands. We have an Urza's Mine. We have an Urza's Tower. We have an Urza's Power Plant, all right? Those create a really, really cool combo here. Add a mana, but if you control an Urza's Mine and an Urza's Tower, add 2 mana instead. Add 3 mana instead. Add 2 mana instead. Great way to mana ramp. We have the Ether Hub. When Ether Hub enters the battlefield, you get energy. You can tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool. If you pay an energy, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool from Kaladesh. This is a really cool card. Start your engines, tap it, you add a mana. At max speed, you add 2 mana. And then we have the Urza's Workshop. Add a mana for each Urza's land you control. Activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts. And I do need more Urza's land. Urza's Saga would be nice in this deck. I just didn't have another one, right? So that is my energy deck. Again, the commander is Satya. A couple pieces of metadata before you go. Deck is worth $434. Technically, it is a bracket 3. I mean, it's a rule 0 because I've got some illegal cards, but it plays like a bracket 3. It's got 1 Game Changer, an Underworld Breach. It's got 1 extra land or an extra turn card. Gothi's Ether Heart. And it's got a tutor card in it. Not a classical tutor, but Saheeli Ray. All right. The mana value for this deck, now normally if you've heard me talk before, I like the mana value of my decks to be under 200 if they're going to be super competitive. This is 203. I probably could take a little bit off the top, especially if I removed one of those Colossuses, but I really like them and like the way they work. And honestly, 203 is still a deck that's going to move really, really fast. And the way this deck works with the energy, you are going to have absolutely 0 issue getting stuff out. So this is my energy deck, one of my favorite decks of all time. Like I said, there are a bunch of Kaladesh cards in here. I mean, if we look at our Planeswalker Saheeli's from Kaladesh, but we also have, and I'm looking through right here, well, Ether Revolt, I'll count that. Kaladesh, Kaladesh, Kaladesh. We have a bunch of Modern Horizons 3 cards as well. Ether Revolt, Kaladesh. What else here? Ether Revolt. Like I said, there are tons of those cards. Ether Revolt from Kaladesh and Ether Revolt, because they were just really, really important sets for me. Seeing that this is the first set me and my 16-year-old really, really built and collected together. So thank you for sharing this with me, this deeply personal deck. If you like energy, you like artifacts, you like counters, this is the deck for you. Go to the show notes and do me a favor, by the way. Go in the comments and let me know if there's any cards I missed, because it is really hard to keep track of all these cards. I've got 56 full commander decks right now, and it is hard to keep track. So if there's any energy cards that I missed, please put them in the comments below. I will likely add them. A lot of times that happens. I realize there are cards I'm missing from this deck. Maybe there's a Saga, a Gamble, maybe a Wheel of Fortune, right? I just didn't have an extra one. But if there's any cards that you would add to this deck, please put them in the comments below. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. And thank you genuinely for coming to another episode of Muscles and Magic the Gathering and sharing one of my favorite passions and hobbies with me, my Commander decks and my Magic the Gathering collection.